It looks like the beginning of the end for the world's largest iceberg. New satellite images show Iceberg A-68 lost a 175 square kilometer chunk of ice, which will likely be called Iceberg A-68c, between satellite passes on April 21st and April 22nd. When it first calved from Antarctica's Larsen Ice Shelf, Iceberg A-68 was nearly 6,000 square kilometers in size, according to images from the Copernicus Sentinel-1 mission. Today, it is around 5,000 square kilometers. That's almost 4 times the size of Greater London, or roughly half the size of the islands of Hawaii or Cyprus. The giant chunk of ice is 160 kilometers long, but only a couple of hundred meters thick, making it remarkably thin for an iceberg of its size. Iceberg A-68 broke off from the Larsen Ice Shelf in July of 2017, losing a small piece called Iceberg A-68b shortly after it calved. Iceberg A-68 then remained largely intact for 3 years as it drifted past the Antarctic Peninsula in the Weddell Sea. Currents in the Southern Ocean are now pushing the iceberg past the South Orkney Islands. As it drifts into warmer waters, it is expected to fragment into smaller ice blocks, many of which could last for years among the ice surrounding Antarctica. Iceberg A-68 is the 6th largest iceberg ever recorded by a satellite. Iceberg B-15, which was 11,000 square kilometers when it calved from the Ross Ice Shelf in 2000, is the largest in the satellite record. In fact, icebergs break off from Antarctica all the time, and some are as big as cities or small states.
That's one huge iceberg, but apparently still not one of the biggest. Images taken by NASA show a northward expanding crevice named Chasm 1 by the British Antarctic Survey, stretching across the Antarctic Brunt Ice Shelf, and a smaller crevice called Halloween Crack, inching closer to the edge of the ice shelf. The 2 cracks are just 4 kilometers or 2.5 miles from each other. When these 2 rifts meet, an iceberg twice the size of New York City will break off of the shelf. NASA predicts the resulting mass of the iceberg could cover 1,700 kilometers or 660 square miles. This would make it the largest iceberg to break away from the Brunt Ice Shelf in over a century. According to the Natural Environment Research Council, this phenomenon is called iceberg calving. Calving occurs when large portions of ice break off from glaciers or the margins of ice shelves. Data from the Natural Environment Research Council show that these shifts have forced British researchers working at the Halley Research Station to relocate. There have been 6 Halley stations built so far. The iceberg is, in fact, next-level ginormous, but NASA says it probably doesn't even reach the top 20 biggest icebergs in history. Can you imagine the size of those?
A ridiculously rectangular iceberg was spotted last October 16th, and there's only one question on everyone's minds. Is it real? NASA's Operation Icebridge photographed a tabular iceberg during a flyover over Antarctica. It's believed to have fractured from the Larsen Ice Shelf in May. Unlike an angular iceberg, which usually has just the tip sticking out, tabular icebergs have a flat surface and steep vertical sides. Tabular icebergs form when an ice shelf grows and calves off, often resulting in straight, geometric lines. The iceberg's sharp corners are an indication that it's new, since wind and waves usually round it out. The berg hasn't been measured, but is likely to be more than a mile across. It's for sure not the biggest one ever recorded. That distinction belongs to Iceberg B-15, which was 183 miles long and 23 miles wide. This is the winter wonderland known as Antarctica, and it just lost a whole lot of volume. This week, an iceberg broke apart from the Pine Island Glacier in Antarctica. Loss of ice from the glacier contributes to a 1 millimeter rise in the world's oceans every 8 years. The part that broke apart is said to be 4.5 times the size of New York's Manhattan Island. And the word is, glaciers are a much cooler place to live than Manhattan.
A giant glacier is wiping out an entire colony of penguins. Short of it being destroyed or moving elsewhere, there's not much that can be done to save the birds. In 2010, the Rhode Island-sized iceberg B-09B became grounded near a colony of Adelie penguins in East Antarctica. The iceberg blocked the penguins' access to the sea and their access to food. To find food, the flightless birds had to make an 80-mile round-trip journey in harsh Antarctic weather. Because of this hazardous trek, the colony's population has withered over 90% from 160,000 to 10,000 now. In research published in the journal Antarctic Science, scientists say the colony could be wiped out unless the iceberg moves elsewhere or the sea ice breaks up. Adelie penguins have lived and bred in the area for more than a century. Do you think humans should try to save them? Or should we let nature take its course and see what happens?
For more news animations and explainers, hit the subscribe and bell button to join the TomoNews family. Thanks for watching.